See? We are.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call to order the Longmont Planning and Zoning Commission December 14th, 2022 meeting. Roll call.
Chairman Poland,
Here.
Commissioner Height,
Horizon.
Commissioner Tetta,
Here.
Commissioner Goldberg, Commissioner Flagg, Commissioner Boone. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Next is communications from Planning Director Glenn Vanden Wigan.
I don't have anything at this moment.
Okay, thank you. Jane, do we have anybody signed up for public comment? Next item is the public comment. The public's invited. They have a 5-minute time limit to speak on topics that are not on the public hearing list for the meeting today. We do have somebody signed up. We do ask that when you come up that you give your name and address for the records. So John Logren. Did I get that right? Logren.
Now where's this?
Okay, there we go.
All right, okay. Hello, my name is John Lochran, and I live at 220 Sherman Street. And I'm here on behalf of the Bond Farm neighbors. And several of the Bond Farm neighbors had wished to speak before you this evening, but because of the late schedule change, they were unable to be here. So I think the meeting was previously scheduled for the third Wednesday. So they did ask me to share some of the general guidelines and progress so far with the group, and in particular the goals of the group. So you may have heard these. So the objectives of the Bonfire Neighborhood Group is to reduce the number of housing units to 46 or fewer, which that density is compatible with that of the surrounding neighborhood, and was also proposed by the previous developer. They want to reduce traffic congestion by not aligning the entrance-exit points with Sherman and Grant. Limit the height of all buildings to 2 stories or less, and use a design that's compatible with the surrounding Victorian and 1960s homes. Provide adequate parking for the development on site in order to in order to avoid overflow parking on Spruce and the surrounding streets. And finally, to preserve the historic buildings on site. So some of the representatives from the neighborhood group met with some of the folks in the planning office, and they said that they had wanted to work together so that we could have some input and constructive input to be proactive in keeping the neighborhood a great place. And I just wanted to share that with you folks as well. And in particular tonight, I had hoped to speak about parking. When I was here before your group last month, I believe, I spoke about traffic. So we're going to get a lot more traffic coming down Sherman and also on Spruce. But as I looked into the parking situation of what's been proposed so far, it just confounds the traffic congestion, which is potentially going to happen if this proceeds as proposed. So with 70 units and 2 garage parking spaces and 13 guest spaces on Spruce and 6 disability spots, that brings a total of 159 spaces that are proposed at this point. And currently, the city requires 2 spaces, I believe, for each new development that's coming on, or each new unit or housing, each unit. But with, if they just have those 2 spaces, I know, like I have like 4 spaces, 3 or 4 spaces in front of my house, and I have a big driveway. But it's still congested. We have traffic from the bar. We have neighborhood traffic, people having events, construction vehicles and whatnot. But it's not very equitable. So if all the people, the overflow traffic from the development can park in front of my house, and not that I own the street, but if they can park on the public street there, we can't utilize those streets. Now, I was understanding in the conversation that I had today that the developer was proposing to deem their streets private alleys as opposed to public streets. So they'll meet different codes as that. They won't have the same width. They won't have parking spaces. I don't know if they'll have sidewalks. So in theory, perhaps maybe those folks from the development can walk their dog up in front of my house. I don't have a dog, but, you know, I don't know if that'll be reciprocated. But certainly, as it is proposed now, we would not be able to park down there. There's going to be 13 spaces on Spruce provided by the developer, but I could foresee even people leaving vehicles there long-term, as often people do when they have an extra vehicle. So those spaces on Spruce could be filled immediately and permanently. I don't know how that would be addressed. But with the additional cars on the street, that's only going to exacerbate the driving and the traffic congestion. So I'd ask you to consider that. The other thing that we're trying to make a proactive suggestion. So my understanding is that if the driveways are around the back of the proposed sites, then the setbacks from the garage could perhaps be less, maybe a 15-foot versus a 20-foot setback, which could be required on a regular city street. So I would suggest or ask you to consider, if they were to make a full 20-foot setback, then people could park an extra long Dodge 150 Ram in their driveway. So I would ask you to consider that parking as you go forward. Thank you.
Wow, it's what we had a couple of weeks ago. Thank you, Mr. Loughran. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the public who would like to come up for the public, invited to be public comment? If not, I'll go ahead and close the public comment. Next item is approval of the minutes from the November 16th, 2022 meeting. Is there any questions, comments, or motions?
I would like to move to approve the minutes from the November 16th, 2022 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah, I'll second that, Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we're ready for a vote. Jane?
Commissioner Height?
Aye.
Commissioner Tedda?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldberg?
Yes.
Chairman Poland?
Yes.
Commissioner Flagg? Commissioner Boone? That passes unanimously, 6-0.
Thank you. Next item is the public hearing item, the Twin Peaks North preliminary plat. Senior planner Jennifer Hewitt Epperson presenting, and let me.
All right. Jennifer Hewitt Apperson, staff planner for this particular project. I'm here to discuss the Twin Peaks North preliminary plat with you this evening. So just as a high-level overview of this project, this is a 7-acre project. It's currently in an area with mixed-use regional center zoning. The applicant is proposing 100 townhomes on this property. It is part of the Twin Peaks urban renewal area, and if there are any specific questions related to that later on, we do have Tony Chacon here who can speak to that. And it's also adjacent to Dry Creek. So the applicant is proposing townhomes or attached single-family, which is a permitted secondary use in the mixed-use regional zoning district. Townhomes are a product type that are currently in short supply in Longmont, and approval of this project would enable development of really this key missing middle type of housing, and that would provide ownership opportunities as well. Yeah. So in terms of where this project is located, in red is the subject property. Immediately to the southwest, this is the Village at the Peaks shopping area, mall, old mall. The area outlined in black is the overall Twin Peaks urban renewal area. So in terms of neighboring properties, so this property fronts on Nelson, it would be accessed from Nelson, and is just to the east of Hover Street. So in terms of zoning, this pretty much large area is all mixed-use regional center. Opposite Ken Pratt, you do have some mixed-use employment, some primary employment, some public facilities. So secondary uses, we've had a lot of discussion of them at this commission over the last few meetings. Secondary uses are identified in the zoning code, and they are, as policy, permitted so much so that they are less than 50%, so not more than 50% of a given area of zoning. So for this particular area, the area outlined in red is the proposed project. The blue outlined areas are currently existing or approved secondary uses. So to the south, we have the old hotel, which is under conversion to be the Vivo Apartments. And then over just south of Dry Creek would be the Suites, which is another hotel conversion. And then we have Sunset Heights / Zinnia, which is currently under review in this little wraparound area. This particular area right here, this is specifically an affordable housing project there. So essentially this area is pretty much built out. And primarily it's occupied by commercial uses. There is additionally a self-storage facility immediately to the east of this property, which would be considered a non-conforming use in this particular district. But again, as noted, both attached single-family or townhouses and multifamily are permitted as secondary uses within this zone. And doing some back-of-the-napkin math here, this particular area of mixed-use regional center, the Twin Peaks urban renewal area is about 149 acres, and currently 6.5% of that land area is and currently has existing or approved, and I'm going to say known secondary uses. We did not do the deep dive to take a look at all of the uses within the Village at the Peaks, but presumably those would be primary uses. Approval of this project would increase that percentage to a shade over 11% of the total area, which still keeps it quite a bit lower than the 50% maximum. Additionally, as I noted, this area is pretty much built out, so really any new development in this area would be infill or redevelopment. So there really isn't space to come in and put in a huge apartment complex or anything of that nature in this area. So one other thing to note is the applicant is requesting a density modification. Mixed-use zoning categories do require, they have a minimum of 18 units per acre. The applicant is requesting a 21% reduction to 14.21 units per acre. Because this property is adjacent to Dry Creek, there is a required 100-foot riparian setback that the applicant is planning to meet. There are no deviations required from that required 100-foot setback. So that does present some challenges with meeting that strict density standard. Additionally, as I noted, townhomes are a recommended use for this area, or they're a permitted use for this area. And getting to, with that, so that setback combined with various right-of-way and open space requirements, as well as having a marketable product, does present some challenges with strictly meeting that 18%, that 18 units per acre. The other thing to note is that the gross density is below the 18, but if we look at net density, taking out the various setbacks, rights of way, open spaces, et cetera, it is a much higher, nearly 29 unit per acre density. But planning actions do use the net density calculation, so hence the requested modification. So in terms of the preliminary plat, it's impossible to see on this screen, so I'm going to let the applicant speak with greater detail about the specifics of this project. But in a nutshell, the units are proposed to be alley loaded. There will be some local streets that connect the property to both Nelson Road to the north and also to Court Place. That would provide another connection to Nelson and also could additionally add some connections to Sunset. And additionally, there would be a network, like I said, of local streets, but also of pedestrian paths. And then in terms of the concept plan, this shows a little more clearly what the proposed layout would be. The applicant will discuss the unit types and more specifics of the project in their presentation. So in terms of staff recommendation, staff does recommend approval with conditions as noted in the attachment PZR 2022-12B. Those conditions are pretty standard for preliminary plats. The first one is that the applicant will determine the method of compliance with the inclusionary housing ordinance during the final plat and site plan review process. Adequate utility easements will be provided, and that the extension of Court Place would need to provide adequate pavement widths, et cetera, to meet the various city requirements. And additionally, all the historic drainage patterns would need to be maintained, given the adjacency to Dry Creek and ensuring that flows don't go off-site. So with that, I'm going to transfer the podium over to the applicant.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Joel Siemens with Rocky Ridge Civil Engineering. Good to see you again. Since we last talked about this project about 20 seconds ago, it's been renamed to Enclave at the Peaks. That's our latest title. So, and let's see, scroll like that. Okay. So again, the vicinity map: south of Nelson, north of Ken Pratt, east of Hover, and north and east of the mall. This is a sample elevation that we're using for the townhome. They're coming in a variety of 2 and 3 level townhomes with an option for a 4th eagle's nest on the top that doesn't exceed the 3rd level rooftop, so it comes out of the roof. And the owner, John Stevens and Andrew Stevens with Sopris, they'll be giving a short presentation when I'm done to talk a little bit more about the product. I'm here to talk about more of the nuts and bolts and how it's put together. The preliminary plat is what we're here for, and they're for sale, lots individually, not for lease. And the square footage of the lots vary depending on the allocation of right-of-way and where the pocket parks need to be. And here's a closer look at the north half and the south half. And One of the challenges was to connect Cordy Place from the east through, and so we're currently going through right-of-way discussions with the city and the self-storage lot to satisfy all parties, so it's a win-win situation. We are improving the water line because the water line did bow down across, and we're putting a new water line for the extent west-east of this development. And of course, we'll be looping that through to the north. This is a view of the sidewalk plan. It gives you more of a accessibility map of where the walks are placed and adjacent. Again, this is preliminary plat, so in final plat, we'll go in the details of whether or not we'll punch through to Hobby Lobby, because right now there is no access easement adjacent to Hobby Lobby. It is, but it's not directly adjacent to our property. There's a small gap there. So we would probably phase in a cul-de-sac or flesh out some of those details at final. But that is the end goal, is to put that through. And like I briefly discussed, water lines, there's two main right-of-ways. The north-south piece is Enclave, and the west-east is extension of Cordy Place. And all the utilities, water, sewer, and storm will also be engineered through those streets. I did a zoom in to Outlaw E, which is found in the middle of the subdivision, as I call it a gathering place. It's about 9,400 square feet. We haven't fleshed out any of the amenities or whatnot, but that's the potential it has there in the center. Basically, the drainage plan is showing all the flows being captured in inlets as they exceed allowable depths in the street, 2 inlets, 2 pipes, and to the south. And so there'll be a series of pipes that go to the southern part. This is my favorite part of the development, the detention pond. We initially went to design a rain garden, but we were requested to satisfy the excess urban runoff volume instead, which is about 2 times the required of just the water quality typical volume. So we were able to achieve that in our preliminary report, and so it's located here at the south. And as Jennifer said, we were able to achieve a 100-foot setback of riparian area to where the rain garden is in that riparian area, but anything vertical is outside of that area. So to review, we're improving our infrastructure with this project. There'll be a decreased fire response time because of connectivity of roads and ability to get to the west end of the existing cul-de-sac at Cordy Place. Where we talked about the riparian setback, we are reducing stormwater discharge for the minor storm events with the addition of this pond, and there will be historic discharge at major storm events. So there will be a lesser flow for the minor storm events. We talked about the gathering place. They are assigned, well, preliminarily, they're thinking about doing the cash in lieu for the affordable program rather than dedicating units at this point. There'll be an increased diversity of housing types in the Longmont area, and it'll improve the blight in this area with the addition of new high-quality infill project. And Angie from our office made this cool closure clip. With us today, of course, Sopris Homes. Stacklock is the landscape architect. They are not here today, but again, we're from Rocky Ridge, Gino and I. And then Delich and Associates is here to answer any traffic questions. And with that, John is going to talk briefly about the product.
Hello, my name's John Stevens, and I am the owner of Sopris Homes, which we started in 1994. Longmont was our first geographic location we built. We started our company in the Creekside neighborhood at the southwest corner of the town. And I think we've built, over the years, in the various neighborhoods in Longmont, we've built probably about 150 houses in Longmont and about 400 in the Boulder County area. So we've been around a while. We're enthused about this location for this type of product because it has a lot of connectivity to resources around, whether it's the fairgrounds for walking and the connection there from there onto the Golden Ponds and the trail system up there. Obviously, the retail and restaurants opportunities are attractive. And then we have a belief, although I'm not sure, I don't know this 100%, but my understanding is that at the southeast corner of Hover and Nelson, eventually that'll be a bus rapid transit stop into Boulder. So it has good car-free commuting opportunities into Boulder. So we like the area really well. Our product mix is 37 two-story townhomes. They range in size from 1,700 to 2,200 square feet. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 to 3.5 bathrooms, depending on the plan. And living room, kitchen, et cetera, on the ground floor. And those will have 2-car garages, alley accessed. 63 two-story townhouses. Oh, 3-story townhouses, 63 3-story townhouses. And not all of them will have this, but many, we believe, will have, based on market demand, a rooftop deck with a little room up there where the stairway up, but you'd land inside rather than outside and go out a door. There's a lot of this type of product being built in the Denver metro area, actually in most of the nation right now. And it seems as though these rooftop decks are really popular. There's an opportunity also for our 2-story houses, 2-story townhouses to have the rooftop decks. Obviously, the views are tremendous. We don't know anything about anything that's gonna go on to the west of us, other than I think Tony. We think it's gonna be higher product density on the 2 parcels to the west of us. There's the Hobby Lobby parcel, and then there's the old Walmart parcel. I think the Walmart parcel is thought of as being apartments, for rent apartments, and maybe the Hobby Lobby might be for sale condos, but I can't speak to any of that. So those buildings may impact the sight lines from our product, but hopefully not. And I think there's enough distance to where we'll still see Long's Peak over them. The materials is primarily siding and stucco, and probably some metal railings, no wood railings. There may be some stone accents. The final architecture is far from being here. So we're really enthused about it, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if now is the time or we wait until later in the presentation. You let me know. Okay.
Thank you. Jane, was this the sign-up sheet? Okay. Next part is the public comment, and we are checking to see if anybody is signed up to speak on this. So give us a few minutes. Nobody. Okay, there is nobody on the list, but if there's anybody in the audience who would like to come up and give comments on this, you do get 5 minutes, and we just ask that you give your name and address for the records. If there's no takers, we will go ahead. Oh, we do have somebody. Please come forward. As I said, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Walther, and I live at 1305 Spruce Avenue. Sorry. I kind of got teared up when I saw all those houses. But we need to do it, and I understand people need places to live, and we're very fortunate to own a house in the Bond Farm. And I'm just tying it into that because this is so different from our neighborhood. There aren't any single-family homes around it. And there are places to eat within walking distance. And it's just really, really different. And, you know, we're engaged in trying to find all kinds of ways to hopefully get you to understand the difference between building townhomes in a big empty lot like this and inserting them into a really old neighborhood surrounded by smaller homes and smaller streets. And I hadn't planned on talking tonight, and I'm just kind of, sorry, emotional. But I think it's a beautiful plan, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes because you do need housing, and I understand Longmont is in a box, and you have to try and put as many houses in your area as you can, and I understand that. It's just, I just hope you see how different this plan is from the plan for Bond Farm. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else there who would like to speak? Please come forward. Once again, state your name and address for the record.
John Lockran, 220 Sherman Street. I would just like to add that looking at the two developments, and I see that there are the two access points at this development, which I just think is awesome. It's close to public transportation, shopping, nature, whatever, but I really like that there are two access points so that traffic flow is going to be distributed. It sounds like a safe option. Thank you.
If there's nobody else, I will go ahead and close the public comment. Thank you. At this time, I will open it up to the commission for questions. Commissioner Height.
Am I on?
You are on.
Nice. I don't know how to push these buttons. Mr. Stevens, thank you very much for bringing a product that is ownable to our attention. I appreciate that. Ms. Hewitt-Apperson, though, I have a question. It goes back to secondary uses and it goes back to MUR zones. In particular, because Mr. Stevens did note that the Hobby Lobby project building might be converted and the old Walmart building might be converted to housing. What is the zoning district? I mean, you on your map, you pointed out this lot. What's the district that we're dealing with? Do you have a map of that?
I do. It is a, there you go. Oh. Okay, now we have the right one up.
That's over, and then it goes over to and is that's bigger than or is that's the Twin Peaks, the village at Twin Peaks?
Correct, the Village at the Peaks. So this area, we would consider this area to be the area bound by Nelson, Hoover, and Ken Pratt.
Okay, even though the MUR district goes to the west across Hoover and to the northwest.
Technically, we could probably
Okay.
incorporate that area as well. It just makes sense since this is within a specific urban renewal area to address this portion of it, but we can definitely do additional analysis.
And this is where I get to my repeated question. Your 5 minutes is up. So, we look at this at a district-wide level, but we, by necessity, break it up. And you're explaining that we're looking at the village plus in this particular instance. Which I guess I understand, but I still want to codify it somehow at a different date, time, and place. That said, the Hobby Lobby building and the Walmart building, I know you said even with this being converted, the threshold of secondary uses still only goes to 11%. Does it change dramatically at all if we include those two lots?
I haven't done the math, but I will bring up the vicinity map. So essentially, you have basically most of this area south of Dry Creek is built out, essentially.
Yep.
It's all developed, and it's primarily developed with commercial uses, with the exception of some residential here that includes a converted hotel.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about
So there is that. You do also have the Vivo apartments down here. But the vast majority of this area, this is it's all the Village at the Peaks. It's probably not going to be anything but the Village of the Peaks.
The subject property then immediately to the west of that, is that approximately where the Hobby Lobby building is?
Roughly.
That's Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, this is Hobby Lobby right here.
That's Hobby Lobby, and then the other one is the Walmart.
Further over is the old Walmart, which is vacant. Okay. And so you're you don't know the math and neither do I. Does somebody? John?
Parcel's about 7 acres total. I believe each of the Hobby Lobby and Walmart parcels are about 7 acres. So I think, by her math, we went from 6% to 11%, so that's 5% net. So my simple analysis is each of those other parcels is about 5%.
Minus 5 plus what did you, right.
So if you
Okay.
parcels would add 10%, so we go to 21.
If I could give some input, I'm Tony Chacon. I'm the Director of the Urban Renewal Authority and also Redevelopment Manager for the city. So, yeah, first of all, just let everybody know that there is nothing on the plate related to Hobby Lobby going away anywhere in the near future. Okay, so they just undertook another 5-year option on their property. They have cheap land right now, so they have no intent of moving. And then they have another 5-year option should they choose it. So we're anticipating you aren't going to see Hobby Lobby moving anywhere in the near future. We do have discussions underway on the old Walmart site, which would bring in possibly about 300 apartment units. But collectively, those two parcels would only add an insignificant amount of land that's actually residential in character. And we actually, from the urban renewal standpoint, are looking for that housing component because it's missing in this particular area. And a lot of the businesses in the area have expressed that concern that there's no housing in the immediate area that's really attracting potential customers to their stores and stuff. And the village is doing rather well, but the little shopping center that's associated with Hobby Lobby, if you have not been through there more recently, it's pretty much barren and vacant. And a lot of that is related to some of the smaller business operations just don't drive enough business there with Hobby Lobby being in place. They were fine when Walmart was there, but now just Hobby Lobby doesn't bring those customers, and that's why they would like to see more housing nearby.
Okay. I'm done.
Anybody else with questions?
Okay, is this mic live? Okay, cool. I don't think I was expecting to speak so soon. Thank you, Commissioner Height, for kind of getting the conversation going. Tony, I don't know, you'll just sit there, or do we want to have you come up to the mic? What's best?
As long as this mic turns on.
As long as your mic turns on, great. Thanks for being here today. It sounds like your presence is really relevant today. Could you expand a little bit more on the need for housing in an urban renewal area or in this area? What's desirable about that, and can you speak more to like how much do we have versus what are you trying to get to?
Well, from an urban renewal standpoint, there's no direct correlation. It's all kind of more site-specific or area-specific as to what the interests are. So a lot of urban renewal areas have commercial enterprises that are suffering or going out of business. And so in conjunction with that, there's this interest in refurbishing some of those properties, either new development, redoing some of the existing buildings. But what we're finding in a lot of these areas, distressed areas, are also lacking housing, and I'll say housing that is attractive to a group or a population that has more disposable income. And so that's why in this particular instance, bringing in collectively between the project you're talking about tonight and the potential for those apartments, that's 400 residential units in there with basically some disposable cash. And being in immediate proximity to the Village of the Peak, we anticipate that then could drive up revenue for not only the businesses, but for the city itself too, because then sales tax collections will increase. And just let you know, on this particular project, it would be of benefit to increase our revenue generation because the city basically is covering a $25 million bond issue that was used to build the Village at the Peaks. So the more money we can generate, the faster we can generate it, the sooner we can get the city out of that debt obligation.
Okay, great, thanks. Jennifer, I wonder if I can ask you a couple questions.
Absolutely.
Jennifer, I was scanning the posts on Facebook, around from the Times Call ad that came out this week. That was very timely to generate interest around this property we're reviewing today. And we've heard on previous Planning and Zoning Commission meetings concerns from folks around the large number of apartment and condos and housing property projects that we've approved recently. And, in the past, we've been reminded and it's been really kind of highlighted how there's a housing gap and there's just not enough inventory to, serve those who want to live, work, and play in Longmont. I wonder if you can just give us an idea, because again, this is 100 units. It sounds like Tony might have another 300, up his sleeve that'll come down the road. Where are we at with our housing situation? Have we met it? Boy, we've approved all these projects and now we're better set, or are we still struggling to keep up with the needs of the city?
I would say we're still struggling. Our most recent community survey shows that for 2021, City of Longmont was operating at a 2% vacancy rate for its housing, which is, as anyone in the real estate industry or planning industry will tell you, is insanely low, and very difficult to produce adequate units that people can afford because the demand is just outstripping the supply. So, our estimated, in 2021, we were estimated to have 40,310 housing units. Our projected population for 2034, so 12 years from now, is about 116,000, which is about 16.5% increase, which also translates into a need for an additional 6,100 or so units, which, they get entitled, but getting them to permit is another story. So it takes a lot longer to get them to permit. And that's new units. That's not just replacement units of, our units that are obsolete or need to be, replaced. So it's, you know, and that assumption of needing an additional 6,100 units, that assumes that our household size stays the same, but it's pretty clear nationwide that our demographic data shows that our household size is going down, and there's no reason to think that it will increase for quite a variety of reasons. And so we really are struggling to meet that demand. You know, Longmont is in a unique situation in that we're largely built out. We don't have a lot of opportunities for annexation remaining within our growth area. We are pretty well surrounded by permanently conserved open space, whether outright purchased or conservation easements. So we really have a finite amount of land that we're able to use. And then looking at existing zoning, the existing zoning map, you know, haven't been able to dive in and do the deep analysis, but if you just do a quick look at the zoning map of the residential districts, so the yellows, the oranges, there's not a lot of unplatted property in those areas. So we're definitely, housing is a huge issue throughout the Front Range, and Longmont is not, you know, we're in the same boat. So, you know, we're faced with low vacancy rates, you know, changing economic situations, changing demand, and how do we meet that? And also, how do we meet the needs of our community with a variety of types?
Okay, great, thank you. I think just to sum it up, it sounds like there's not enough existing inventory. The population in Longmont's gonna grow. We are already struggling to meet the demand now. We need to continue to add more on top of that. But the existing land where additional units could be built is really limited. And so we really prioritize these infill opportunities where we're building on, you know, blighted land that has good access to shopping, transportation, and all these other perks that we heard during the presentation today.
Correct. And as Mr. Stevens indicated, this property, you know, is in there is a proposed bus rapid transit line proposed not far from this as well. So it will ultimately be, this area will ultimately be well served by transit as well.
Great. You know, something else that's been real hot lately is our discussions around water and Longmont's ability to secure water for the future. Are we adding to the problem by approving more developments, by adding in another 100 townhomes on this property? If we approve that, are we kind of feeding the problem rather than, you know, thinking more sustainably about the future of Longmont? Or how should we kind of balance contributing to that?
So that's a really interesting question, actually. I am not a water planner, nor do I play one on TV, but I did do a review of our water demand evaluation from May 2019. And what's really interesting is that even though our population has increased, our developable area has increased, the average daily water demand in terms of what is processed at the plant has actually gone down. So, you know, the city is doing a really good job in terms of emphasizing and encouraging efficiency. There definitely have been some efficiencies obtained, and we will continue to move in that direction. Additionally, you know, our water resources folks are, you know, constantly looking forward on these issues. So, and to ensure that we are planning for the future and ensuring that we have enough raw water.
Got it. So it sounds like we've made some good improvements, or, you know, the behavior of Longmont residents is such that we're actually dropping the amount of water we use per person, I think, over previous years, which is great.
Correct. Well, and this is just average daily demand. I mean, I'm talking about the
So kind of citywide.
citywide, the gallons per day that the wastewater or that the water treatment plant is even processing. So
Got it.
that total number has actually gone down.
Despite what I would guess is considerable growth even since 2019 in the city.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks. Those are just a couple of hot questions, and we'll see if I can't come back with some more.
All right.
Back, sorry. The density waiver, Am I on?
There you go. You're good.
You mentioned a density waiver, and then when I was looking at the packet, I didn't appreciate that we were being asked to approve a waiver, and then when I relook at the packet, it's an administrative waiver. We're not being asked to approve the 18 DU per acre modification to 14.2. Staff has done that?
So technically, because the waiver request or the reduction in density request is part of a major development application that the commission is considering, the commission will then address that modification
So we are
request.
being asked to,
You are being asked, yes.
okay.
It is technically within the amount, the range that we could do administratively, but because it is an action, because we are asking you to act on the preliminary plat, it falls within your purview.
I think I see it. Joel, do you want to talk about it, or do you think it's covered well enough? I mean, the 100-foot setback, I understand, and when I look at the map of the density of townhome units that you have in there, I don't see how you could put more.
That's correct. Yeah, so it was,
Yes.
well,
I guess you could
outside
go
of the,
higher, but-
yeah, with the New Orleans style stilts in the detention pond maybe, but, no, because of right-of-way and, fire access and open space and the expanded detention requirements, so we were given, that's about as dense as we can get it with this, product. So, yeah, that was described pretty well on, what we want to make sure we're granting, Nelson what they need and, the setbacks on the west and east, and then the through street of Corte Place, so, yes.
In Cordy Places, it goes butting up to Hobby Lobby, which apparently isn't leaving soon. Do you have to put a turnaround in there, and does that further reduce your?
So, the long and the short of it is if Hobby Lobby goes forward, they'll be asked via Mark Sampson to provide a access easement to fill the gap, because right now there's like a 2 or 3 foot gap between. There is an access easement, but it's not directly adjacent to our property. And so, according to what's platted, we can't connect because there is no access, there is no granted access or right-of-way. And so, there's hope to make that connection, but if in the meantime there's not, we would do a phased cul-de-sac to wheel the fire trucks around and then bring them back.
And would that jack with your density more?
It would take out 2, 3. It wouldn't be a large amount, but because the bulk of it would be in the right-of-way, and then the bulb would take out probably the southern 2 units there.
So the next, another thing that we have to prove too is that you connect well. Why do you not, there's no easement for you, for the Soper's property onto the Hobby Lobby property, or the easement is offset? I'm not understanding.
The easement is offset. So we, on our property, we can put our right-of-way right up to that property line. And on Hobby Lobby's property, here's the property line, and just offset, there is an access easement, but it's not adjacent to the property. So there's just a gap of no man's land that can't be flagged as emergency access or public access.
Who owns that?
Is
The no
it?
man's land?
I'm sorry, Tony Chacon again. Give you a little perspective there. So when the Hobby Lobby area was platted, they put in a utility easement, but the utility easement did not extend all the way to the property line on the north-south axis there. They had a gap of about 3 to 5 feet. For whatever reason, we don't know why they did not include that as part of that easement. So that's where the issue lies. There's no, so the Hobby Lobby doesn't own the property, they just lease the space. So the owner of that property, though, actually owns that 3 to 5 foot. So just let you know what we've been doing relative to our urban renewal efforts, because there's a lot of issues across that entire site right now. One of those is access along this area. So Hobby Lobby wouldn't have to go away. Right now, there's a 30-foot utility easement. We're trying to convince them to convert that to an access easement and then give us that additional 3 to 5 feet for access easement too. So we're in discussions with them on that matter right now. And hopefully we'll make some progress here over the next 12 months or so. And I do believe from a development standpoint, I think Sopris was talking about starting on the east side of their project, then working towards the west, which would then give them more time to resolve that issue with the Urban Renewal Authority. The other thing I'd like to point out too, so from an urban renewal perspective, we looked at this area that included the Walmart property, Hobby Lobby's property, and this particular piece of property in its entirety from a redevelopment standpoint. And so that density requirement, the 18 units an acre, assuming we get basically that 300 unit project's going to be 100 units an acre. So if you add that plus this project, in reality, the average is well over 18 units an acre from a planning perspective of the Urban Renewal Authority. So I know the code is kind of wish-washy right now if that applies to each parcel of land or if it applies to kind of the redevelopment area. And that's something we've been talking about with Glenn on that matter. So I hope that kind of clears it up a little bit about that access easement. The other thing too is we're not, I haven't been in more recent discussions, but given they have looped roadway system, there's question whether or not they even need to have a passage through that point at this point in time.
As I understand the issue, we just need to make sure that a new subdivision or a new plat doesn't make it difficult for that plat to match up with other property. And it doesn't sound like that's the issue at all.
No.
It's not that the road comes east-west at different
No.
distances. There's a north-south
It's that
road
north-south issue.
and an
Yeah.
east-west, and you just T-bone into
Yeah.
the.
So
into the-
so this
no,
project.
So it's not an
Yeah.
issue.
So this plat would dedicate the right-of-way through this entire project site. That would then allow us to tie in when we can coordinate with Hobby Lobby and that particular property owner.
Okay. And then, Joel, back to my original question, which is, for the purposes of, I think it's 1502-06015, you have to have an unusual aspect of the site that justifies your density deviation, and I think with being in the 100-year, well, you have to be outside the 100, you have to be 100 feet away from the
From the
riparian
riparian,
zone, which is the unique character I see of this particular
Correct.
property that justifies granting that waiver. Thank you.
Commissioner Flake.
Showing you.
No,
He said he was going to you.
there.
There we are. Thank you. I guess, Jennifer, this question is for you. I had some questions about the plat itself. On Outlot N, who will have maintenance of that area long-term?
That is actually a question for the developer. Presumably that, those outlots are typically owned and managed by a property owners association of some sort. With that, I'm going to have the applicant come and speak directly to that. But typically, we do have the requirement that they are owned in some form or fashion.
So Outlaw M
Yeah.
is the detention area, and so the city requires us to generate a PSC set of drawings that clearly designates the HOA that is charged of maintaining that. If they fail to do so, then the city comes in, maintains it for them, and then bills the HOA.
And how will you put that together and hand it off to the HOA?
It's generated with the plats and the PIA and the PIP, and the site plan. And so it's one package, and they're signed off on and all recorded together. So it's something that Judah Gaoni has. And so if there's any questions about the detention pond, it clearly states the responsibility of the maintenance of the pond and the outlet structure is on the HOA.
And will that accrue beginning with the first sale of the first property? Or will it take a certain percentage of the number of properties sold to have that transfer made?
Could you rephrase that? Sorry.
Okay, you're not going to sell every one of those units
Correct.
all at once. So at what point in the process of selling off the units does that parcel get transferred over to the HOA, which I assume is going to be managing it?
It's upon plating, it's the HOAs, yeah.
And so you will construct it, will you also landscape it?
Yes, there's a landscape plan that's part of the final documents as well, yes.
So, and that landscape plan will be completed with the handoff to the HOA?
Yeah, before they can pull their first building permit or CO, they have to build and verify all the rights-of-way and the detention pond and all the utilities and test them.
Right, but I'm talking more specifically for landscaping, which has a tendency to get lost in everything.
Is the landscaping required as well for, I'd like to turn the mic over to my good friend, Christian Huffer. Christian?
Don't go too far.
I won't. We'll call him Chris.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the council. Chris Huffer with Public Works. Through the PIA process, which the developer signs, they construct all the public improvements. One of the things that we check before granting what we call construction acceptance, which is kind of the initial acceptance of everything they've done, is we work with planning to make sure that the landscaping is installed. If they are not able to install it at the time of construction acceptance, we do have a option for them to put up additional securities so that they do get it constructed before the first CO is issued on a building. And then we can release those once it's constructed.
What if there's a determination that however much they've set aside isn't enough, either due to rising costs or unforeseen issues?
The intent of the securities is to be an incentive for them. We're holding their money.
Right.
It's an incentive for them to construct it. It's not intended necessarily for the city to take that money and construct it ourselves. But we would ask them to provide us with a cost estimate of the time that we're going to take securities, which generally is within months of when they're going to be constructing. So it should be very close to the cost.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have is in regards to parking on the site. And I'm not sure who wants to answer this. So how many garages per unit
So it's a two-car garage, correct?
for all units?
Yes. And then let's bring up one of the exhibits. Hold on a second. Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Trying to refresh my memory on driveway lengths. But it's right against the alley, so it's just the two-car garage, and then there are pedestrian refuge crossing areas where the bump out is provided to make a shorter crossing across the right-of-way, and so both Cordy Place and the North-South Street has on-street parking.
Okay, so then you've accommodated guest parking
Yes.
in those areas. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair Poland. I have basically some comments to planning as opposed to the applicant. But the applicant shed some light on some questions that I did have. First of all, I really appreciate that you included the urban renewal plan from 2009 in our packet, because being relatively new with the planning process, I didn't know all the details. And I appreciated those details. I've bounced back and forth about this project as I was reading through the packet, and my first thought was, oh, finally, we have some for sale units. We've been approving all these apartment buildings, and it's really nice to have some for sale units. And then I thought, you know, there's no other housing in this area. And is that a compatibility issue? Now, this evening, I find out, which again, because we're not aware of all the planning projects, this evening I find out that the Walmart site is going to be 300 units, and Hobby Lobby down the road will be additional housing units. That's very useful in making a decision, but that wasn't obvious in the packet and with the information that I had to work with. It's also interesting that it was noted that the merchants want housing with disposable income. And we have 3 LHA projects, 2 existing and 1 coming up. And those folks don't have a lot of disposable income. So this project would help that requirement from the urban renewal plan. And the fact that we're going to have 2 other large housing projects near it make me feel a whole lot better about it tonight than I did coming into it. One of the comments that I made before the meeting was, well, we're not going to have any public comment because there's no neighbors to complain about it, like we've had for many of our recent projects, because there's no housing around it. And the bit of housing that is around it are not neighbors who would come to this meeting and complain about it. The merchants want the housing, but they're not here to promote it. So those are just some comments. And you will see that my vote will tend towards it. And as I walked into the room, I was feeling against it. So all of this additional information is really helpful, and I'm glad to see that the urban renewal redevelopment, whatever it's called, includes the housing, because it wasn't evident off the bat. So, thank you.
Chris, I'm going to ask you to come up. If you can speak, I think you're going to be the person to speak for this. Along Dry Creek, that area going, let's say, from Hover eastward, is there anything happening with it? The one thing when I look at this, I wish there was a way, because right now the way I see it is the road right after Hover, right east of Hover, where the bank is an access point to get over to the village at the Peaks. The only other one I see is over to the east, over Corty Place, over, and then you have to go through the parking lot of that apartment. Is there any thought to do an intermediate bridge, walkway, path or something, just so that when these things get built, the people have a better way to get over to the Peaks? And is there anything in general happening along Dry Creek? And I'm going to turn my mic off so that you can.
There we go. Chairman, yes, there have been many discussions about pedestrian corridors as well as traffic corridors through there. And Tony Chacon may be able to talk a little bit more about concepts that we have looked at. Just as Cordy Parkway is extending across this property and dead ends at the Hobby Lobby area, the intent would be to extend that in some fashion in the future to be able to create some kind of a grid system for public right-of-way through there. As we go west of this property, there may be an opportunity to extend a public right-of-way across Dry Creek and construct a bridge. I know that our Natural Resources Group is looking at extending the walkway on the south side of Dry Creek from the mall out to Sunset. And as part of that, there have been discussions about a pedestrian crossing of the creek as well. So those are things that are in discussion right now, but I don't believe that there's any immediate plans for those.
Yeah, I'd like to add too. I'm glad you asked this question. So again, it comes back to the urban renewal. So under the urban renewal designation, we have the ability to raise revenue that can be utilized for infrastructure improvements. So the intent has always been to see what we can do, first of all, to improve the character of that drainage corridor there, because concrete just doesn't do justice for what it could be. And we've also talked about potential crossings to support movement of the residents in this, I guess on the northern section of this urban renewal area to the Twin Peaks. Not Twin Peaks, that's the old place we knocked down, the village at the Peaks. So we have been looking at the possibility of extending that access drive we talked about earlier, that easement, trying to get across the creek for vehicular movements. Of course, that could be a costly endeavor. But at a minimum, we're also looking to see where we can put in pedestrian crossings where appropriate. And so the one thing about these projects as they come forth, they will lead to generating the revenues that we would need to make these improvements. So yes, we've been in discussions with our engineers and saying, how can we make this happen? And their answer is, find us the money. So that's what I do.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to give my comments. As with Commissioner Boone, when I first looked at this, I did have the big question, why are we putting townhomes and not apartments here? Especially when there's a variance, I'm going to say variance being asked for the density. But now seeing that there are going to be apartments further to the west, in the general vicinity, that the townhomes do make sense in this area. Housing, it gives a variance of housing then to the apartments that will be built here shortly, hopefully shortly. So given all that, I am in favor of this, but I look forward to other comments from the commission. Commissioner Goldberg.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. And thank you, Jennifer, for the answers earlier. Yeah, I too am supportive of this project. I think really our comp plan, Envision Longmont, is begging for it. There's a lot of desirable attributes to this, all of which I think have been mentioned by my fellow commissioners. The fact that it promotes compact and efficient growth in our quickly, running out of space city of Longmont that we love. It's promoting a mixture of land use. It's infill and redevelopment focused. These are little gems that we need to grab onto when they come across our plate. It's serving a housing gap that, I think we all know folks are just struggling to be able to live and work in Longmont, and this will help serve that. And the fact that it's ownership and will allow folks to kind of enter into the housing market. I'm not sure that's the right phrase. The fact that we didn't have any concerns from neighbors, as Commissioner Boone identified, there were no neighbors to complain. And if there were neighbors here today, they'd be applauding bringing in more folks to come shop at their businesses. There's existing infrastructure, as we've mentioned already, transportation, retail, schools, Excel, everyone's, all of our partners are willing to support this project. I too thought at first, boy, what are we doing with a bunch of townhomes in this kind of, quiet part of Nelson? But I think that's exactly what it needs. Is it needs a little bit of life, a little bit of energy to kind of connect the dots and really bring that, make that a more vital part of our town. So it improves an otherwise vacant area. The applicant has done what they can to meet the standards, including the riparian setbacks. So I think this is a really great project.
Do we have any other comments? Do we have any motions? Commissioner Goldberg.
Well, I didn't see anyone jumping, so I figure I would go ahead and do it. I guess my final thought is the conditions that were recommended by the city are all like expected. There's like no curveballs here. You know, I think we could, without those conditions, they would still need to be met in order to be approved, is in my mind. But I think for the sake of keeping it abundantly clear, I guess my recommendation then would be to approve PZR 2022-12B with the conditions that are listed in our packet, conditions 1 through 4.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? You know what? I'll go ahead and I will second the motion. Is there any other comments? Any other questions? If not, Commissioner Height.
In his 2 cents worth, which is that, as I previously discussed, I think the density waiver conditions have been met. And I'm also satisfied too that though it is more residential in the MUR zone, this MUR zone is fairly fully developed, and the secondary use here is under 20%, and so I'm satisfied that it meets that secondary use criterion. So I'll be in approval too.
Okay, Jane, let's go ahead and have the vote.
Commissioner Height?
Aye.
Commissioner Teta?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldberg?
Yes.
Chairman Poland?
Yes.
Commissioner Flake? Aye. Commissioner Boone?
Yes.
Chairman, that passes unanimously 6-0.
Thank you. Let me dig up where is that? This item now enters a 7-day appeal period. During the time, any aggrieved party may appeal the commission's decision by submitting a written appeal letter stating why the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision should be amended or reversed by City Council. All appeals must be in writing and must be received in the City Clerk's office and the Planning Office within the 7-day appeal period. The appeal period begins Thursday, December 15th at 8 a.m. and ends Wednesday, December 21st at 5 p.m. And that is that for the public hearing items. Next item is final call for public invited to be heard. This is if any of the public would like to come up and talk about something that was not on the agenda for today, you have a second chance. Seeing nobody move forward, I will go ahead and close the final call public invited to be heard. Next is items from the commission, and I believe Commissioner Height, you might have something.
Circulated a cheat sheet. I don't know, am I on?
You are now.
Commissioner, I did not tune into my socials, and apparently, I don't know what you were referencing on Facebook or whatever else came in, but I know that in the last several meetings, we have discussed, or we have seen, an awful lot of for rent applications come before us, which I haven't hidden from the fact that I don't think that that meets the city's goal of having diverse housing types being made available. And so I put together this cheat sheet, which I circulated, quoting from Envision Longmont and then quoting from 1501030, which is the purpose and intent of the zoning code, which is to provide generally a range of housing types, including townhomes, multifamily apartments, condos, live-work situations, as well as housing for special populations, that routinely comes up again and again and again as a mix of what we should be doing. Frankly, 100 townhomes in that particular lot was nice, but it would have been great to see a mix. of smaller family houses. We then delve into what's the market carry. And the market truly likes apartments right now for whatever reason. But I don't think that we should be beholden to market forces when we are charged with the longer vision of, a longer envision of what Longmont should look like. And though apartments meet, and I want to say a quick need, to put people in houses, ownership is a wholly different game than giving money to the California Teachers Retirement Fund, which is funding an awful lot of this type of development. I think people that have an ownership interest in our community are more vested in this community. Not that apartment dwellers are not going to be vested. It creates a different type of opportunity for a living experience that is being missed when we allow apartments to get rubber stamped. And so I would like us, I'm going to keep banging my gavel on more diversity as opposed to apartments. And I wanted to share with you the code provisions by which we should be doing this. That's what I had to say. I don't know if there's more to be said.
Try again. Thank you. As I said before, I was really happy that this was a for-purchase product. But unfortunately, the insurance costs wrapped around condominiums has gotten way out of hand, both in building them and just in maintaining them. For the builders, the insurance for a condominium over an apartment is about 3 times. And for design professionals, of which I'm retired, but I used to be, the insurance to be involved in the design of a condominium project over an apartment complex is also, for your E&O insurance, is about 3 times. So the insurance industry has really put a damper on condominiums. And the way that many developments have gotten around that is to build them as apartments and keep them for the 6 to 7 years statute for construction defects, and then turn them over into condominiums. But unfortunately, building them as condominiums right off the bat is almost cost prohibitive because of the insurance issues. And it's really unfortunate. And that's probably why all of the more recent projects that have come through as apartments, and we've asked, did you consider condominiums? And every one of these builders has said, no, we do apartments. And that's why. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate, but I don't know how to fix that. It's an insurance problem.
Okay, Commissioner. Give me a second.
Sorry. I'm looking at this slightly differently because I get concerned that when we do have a rental kind of a property situation, development, we allow them to do cash in lieu. We don't require a set amount of those apartments to be set aside as affordable housing, which I think if we did would contribute to getting more people off the street. I know it's tough to deal with people who don't have a sense of how to maintain an apartment or a townhouse or even a house, and to coach them through that. And I know from past experience in other towns that sometimes there becomes a conflict between maintaining those units by people who have never been in that position and people who have been in that position a long time. And so I don't know how we work with that, but I think the way to get more people into housing is to have a standard that we maintain of this amount, percentage-wise of anything you built, rental or for sale. We need to have affordable housing and not cash in lieu. I think it's going to be tough. I mean, but it's going to take grit. But I think that's the way we have to do it. And it's not inexpensive. But we pay for it one way or another. And I think we have to have more affordable product built. Maybe the city has to figure out how that's done, or we work with a developer to get it done, but we need to do that. And maybe we have to look at being very careful in how we measure out our housing percentages in mixed-use zones, because of those areas, as we know, there's less neighborhood conflict in putting that housing there. I don't want to create areas where, oh, well, that's the affordable housing area. If they're intermixed with regular housing, we don't have that. I just think we have to put more thought into that. The other part is that lots of times we think of people leaving apartment situations and moving into a single-family structure or a townhome that has lawn area or some kind of landscaping to maintain. There are a lot of people out there that are not into doing that at all. And you notice that even people out in single-family residential structures, given the option of not having landscape to maintain, they will rock in that yard. And the minute they do that, of course, they've created a weed barrier underneath the rocks. Whatever falls from the sky will not get into the land. And in fact, we're starting to dry out our land. We really are. That's a whole nother system and a whole nother discussion about keeping the water in the ground and not creating a microclimate of a desert area. But some people are not up to maintaining their properties, especially the outside landscaping. And I think that has to be thought about very carefully. I am concerned about outlets when, like the one that we have tonight, we have city provisions to try to make sure that those outlets get landscaped. But the way that the housing turns over and the way the builder actually passes on that parcel after it's been completed, and I have to say in brackets completed, because sometimes they are not. And there isn't enough cash left, enough funding to adequately landscape and maintain those areas. I think that there has to be more coaching, perhaps, by the city in how do they maintain their outlots and along the water areas and trails so that communities aren't left with no idea how to get it done. So that's my concerns.
I just want to say, for Commissioner Height, and I know that Commissioner Teta and Commissioner Goldberg have been here a while. So 7, 8 years ago, we really did do a lot of approval of subdivisions of single-family houses. Probably more to the detriment to the fact that we really didn't have a lot of apartment approvals back then. It's a cyclical thing, I think. I understand your concern. I just want to let you know that it's cyclical, and I think especially when we get into where, for the most part, we're doing a lot of in development, and a lot of it's kind of like on the outskirts. It's areas that really do call more for apartments because they're off of main roads. It just happens to be where we've been asked to approve things. It's just the way it is. That's kind of my comments to kind of, I don't know, put you at ease a little bit, but it's cyclical. And as I said, 7, 8 years ago, we did a lot. Southwest Longmont, we did a lot of stuff down in Southwest Longmont, a lot of housing over there. So I see it come and go. I do agree with you. I hope that we do see more. I would like to see something like, I believe it's the one area where they put in the smaller houses on smaller lots. Love that idea, if we can see something like that. The other thing, cash in lieu was brought up. I must say, I agree with that. I think it is too easy for the developers to do cash in lieu. And I believe, though, that the city council may be looking at that, maybe. Oh,
It has come up, and I think the council has asked staff to take a look at the cash in lieu. Because there is a fear, that's the automatic step, I think, that most developers take. It's not something that necessarily builds to a 1-to-1 ratio of affordable housing units. It's really a gap, a dollar amount that's the gap between what's affordable and what market rate is. And a lot of people, I don't think, understand that. It's, if you're required to have 3 units, the fee in lieu doesn't pay for 3 units. It pays for the difference between the affordable. So I know we are getting kind of a war chest of those funds, so it does help us on more federally funded to provide some incentive dollars as well. So it's not like the fee in lieu has no value to us. It helps us get the most affordable units, which are only done through some kind of federal assistance. So that's about what I know about fee in lieu. I don't know that it's scheduled for a agenda or anything. You don't know? Okay.
Thank you again. I wanted to give my 2 cents worth about the fee in lieu. So the last project that we looked at, we were told by the developer, I think this was maybe the sugar mill project. I think it was that one, that the city told them that they preferred the fee in lieu on that project. So I'm wondering if that's something that is project specific, or is that what developers are being told? That's number one. And then I have a question. I'm not aware of a lot of projects that have the affordable units within the subdivision. Blue Vista is one that comes to mind, because I think the city owns the lots of the affordable units, perhaps. And that's what keeps them affordable. But I could be wrong. And I'm just wondering how those kinds of creative affordable housing, and those are single-family, small little single-family homes, most of which are market rate and whatever percentage are permanently affordable. But I don't think those homeowners own the land, but I could be wrong. And I know there was some kind of special financing that the city helped with as well. But I'm wondering if there's other ones of those, or if that's being pursued at all.
As you know, when we recently went through the plan development to create the Costco project, the city did end up with a portion of property there. Now, there's also a private owner next to them, and my understanding is we are looking to commingle the properties and do something very similar. I'm not, I guess you got your 2 newest planners here.
Oh.
So I'm not sure the land trust, I think, is what you're talking about.
Yes,
where
yes,
a 501c3 or the city maintains the ownership of the land, and then it's more of a condo for the unit. And I'm not too familiar with that. But thinking off the top of my head, I know along Quail Run, I think there are some units that were affordable that were integrated into that subdivision. But that's about the only one I know. The city does own several parcels around the community, but they tend to go for that rental at 50% AMI and kind of max the number of units. And I tend to agree from a philosophical standpoint. I think it's so much better to get the private sector to figure out how to build units at even 120% AMI. I think it would be such an easier problem to solve, I think.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I think it especially matters when we're talking about a for sale product. And I can't remember the last time we've saw a for sale attached product come before us. I want to say maybe it was the Terry Street brownstones, long time ago. But I think it's maybe the beginning of a trend. I hope we're going to see some more for sale attached product.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, Commissioner, I just wanted to respond to you directly. First, apologies, I brought up Facebook or social media and I didn't expand on what was said. The two biggest concerns raised on social media were around, well, there was a couple themes. Yay, more housing. Additionally, yay, more housing, but we're running out of water. And so I think of those as kind of like public invited to be heard. So I just wanted to make sure that we went on record and asked Jennifer to kind of clarify, A, what is our current housing situation, and B, what is our current and projected water situation. I don't think technically, you can kind of finagle that into some of our review criteria, but I just wanted to kind of address some of the concerns that I was hearing, if you will. But I think as it relates to this, thank you for encouraging the distribution of this to the commission. Yeah, I think about this as, I don't think about this, this is coming from our comp plan, these are goals and policies. I think about them like kind of citywide, kind of bigger versus project focused. And so when I think about, and it's saying we want things like townhomes and multifamily apartments and diversity and a variety of different options, attached, not attached, I really think about kind of big picture. I'm looking at the whole map. And so, and I do feel like we're getting that distribution. And maybe it's because we've been doing this together for a lot of years, but I feel like we've gone through some cycles, as the chairman mentioned, where a lot of housing, and then, oh crud, we don't have enough housing for people to live and work here, so apartments. But I feel like we're kind of seeing that diversity, and today being another example of that diversity, today being townhomes and ownership. So while I do think the recent trend has been a lot of rentals, I guess I don't know how that distribution is looking and so I don't know if we can lean on Glenn and his team to come back to us. Is there an ideal breakout of ownership opportunities versus rental opportunities, and where are we shaking out there? And what are we trending towards? I'd love to have a better idea. Maybe my rosy lenses are off. Maybe we are so heavy with apartments now and we need to recalibrate, but I didn't think we were there. And so that's why I haven't had as much concern with that. And just recognizing the current state we're in is that we just don't have enough places for people to live in our town. I also agree that ownership is more ideal than rentals, but I also recognize that I come from a position of privilege where I can afford that, and I have that opportunity, not everyone does. And so I want to make sure that while we're leaning on one, we want to make sure that we are serving, I think as it says here, all socioeconomic groups. I want to be mindful of that. Not everyone has the money to put down on a home. And so I want us to help them get there and make sure that those opportunities are there, but make sure we're serving everyone. So those are just a few thoughts. So Glenn, I don't know if that's a formal request, but if we can get an idea, or if you can chime in now or later with where should we be going as far as breakout between rental versus ownership? Where are we now? And, how should that be impacting our decisions?
Yeah, just a couple of things. We did just put out our 2021 community profile, and this does take a very broad look at our housing types. So right now, we're about 65% single family. Of the 40,000 units that Jennifer mentioned, 18% multifamily, and 17% we defined as single-family attached. So that's like what you saw tonight. When I looked at this, what kind of shocked me a little bit is, geez, when we issued permits, we issued 70 single-family permits and 561 multifamily permits. Now, that could be single-family attached as well. So I just thought, what does that mean as far as changing this balance? And I put all of the units as 561 units as being all multifamily, all apartments, and didn't give anybody any credit for single-family attached that are probably in here. Doesn't change those percentages 1%, basically. It's just a bump, a little tiny bump. Now, we've had some, this year will be the same. I looked at what the Planning Commission looked at and saw. Kind of the same numbers as far as a large amount of multifamily, 644 units, actually, you looked at some degree. That is more than likely going to be apartments, but then also 123 single-family attached and 31 single-family units. So almost the reverse balance of what you see here, but I guess just a real broad brush number that I've always used as kind of a guideway is your community should be about 30% multifamily. That's kind of a normal number. We haven't really, I noticed the comp plan doesn't get to that kind of detail, but we're certainly not running over the single-family character of the neighborhood, of the community. So that's still the dominant housing land use.
Yet, but if I keep waving the flag for more apartments and multifamily, then maybe we'll skew that. But no, I think that's really helpful. So it sounds like you're saying 30%, 70% approximately is kind of where in your mind you're trying to get us towards, or kind of your benchmark, and we're kind of on pace for that. Is that where we're sitting at? Did you say 60-40?
Well, I mean, at this rate, it's going to be 25 years or so, I think, before we get to that point. So I haven't really crunched that. Now, I will say we are under contract with a company called Root Policy.
Yeah.
That is going to really delve in deep as far as what the housing is in our community, what's projected, and what are those gaps, primarily from affordability, and we asked them to look at the attainability too.
Yeah.
So they're just under contract. It's going to be about a 4-month deal. So we'll get a little bit more grain to what the housing stock is out there.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
And will you then do a presentation for us?
Oh, here, we brought copies for you. Yes, it certainly will include the Planning Commission. And Root Policy, they're a good group. I think we were glad to get them. We actually went out last spring, and we got nobody to respond to our RFP. So we delayed it about 6 months. We got about 5 firms that put in for it, and I think we got the best. So excited about that.
Commissioner, you turn down there. There you go.
I just wanted to add on, yeah, I've been here 10-ish years too, and have seen the cycle. And it's geographic as well as housing type. Nelson and Airport, that area south and west over there, yeah, that's all single family. And possibly shame on us for not having more multifamily in that area. It developed into a little enclave of kind of big single-family homes over there. The north and east part of town seems to be getting developed now with an awful lot of apartments. That's just what I see. I also am known to sit on this commission and hear from people that say, what's with all the apartments in my neighborhood, which is where I live in Northeast Longmont. So it's trendy, it is money, and money, money talks, but our rules guide us at a different level, at a different principle than just following the dollars, and it being more expensive, and the insurance. There are developers that do it. Boulder Creek does it, Sopris does it. There are people that figure out how to make this work. Possibly they build better and don't have construction defect liabilities in their bailiwick that they have to deal with. But for us as a commission that's charged with how this town develops, kinda, we approve it, what comes before us. When we're charged with trying to assure that there's a diverse housing type, we should be mindful of that. I'm not saying that we don't do it, it's just the trend, we need to possibly be the dam that holds back some of the easy money.
Any other comments? Any other comments in general from the commission? Commissioner Goldberg.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Jennifer or Glenn, can you clarify when we change the date of a P&Z meeting like this, how do we notify the public? Or maybe Jane even knows the answer. But, we want to make sure that our neighbors know when we're happening and they can come on out and be heard. So I just want to make sure we're addressing that. Where can they go to find out the next meeting? And if there's a change?
Well, the one thing I was going to mention is regardless of when that date is, we still do our notice, within the timeframes that we're required to do. So we moved it up a week, so anybody that's in the perimeter all gets notified.
Sure.
Now, anybody else, I think, that assumes we're meeting on that third week, I don't know how they would know that something has shifted.
So I did post, I'm sorry, Commissioner Goldberg, I did post on the city's agenda management page. I posted the cancellation notice immediately following the meeting where we changed the date. So if they opened the cancellation notice, they would have found the rescheduled date on that notice.
Great. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're, serving the community as best as we can. I think, generally speaking, this meeting is on the third Wednesday, but certainly around holidays or depending on the density of our agenda, it might move, right?
Glenn, I want to clarify, I'm reading this right. Owner versus renter occupied, we're 65-35.
Yep.
What that says?
Yep.
Okay. So we're below threshold for owner.
Yeah, one is housing type and one is whether a renter lives in it or an owner lives in it.
Next is items from Planning Director Glenn.
Well, I covered a lot of my items, but I did want to mention water has come up a couple of times, and the water resource folks hosted our planning staff probably a month ago, and they spent 2 hours going through the water portfolio and what it means and their various policies and why. But I thought it might be real instructional for the Planning Commission if we asked them to do an abbreviated presentation on the city's policies and our portfolio of water and how we got to where we are right now. But I'm hoping to do that maybe in January. I think we have kind of a business meeting where we generally pick officers for the next year. But we'll try and find some time and invite those folks to do that presentation. All right. And other than that, thanks for a great 2022. And we look forward to 2023 and hope you have a great holidays.
Just a quick, do we have new planning?
I did want to mention that. So on the 20th, on Tuesday, council will be appointing new board and commission members.
Thank you. And then we are now in adjournment.